Hi guys. So amazing mommy experiences when my son was first born. Like not amazing. Not amazing at all. He was what the doctors considered 3 weeks past due. I call bull on that. I was telling them from the very beginning that they had the date wrong. But, they have to go by the first day of your last period as the first day of pregnancy. So you had that 2-week margin of error there. And I pretty much knew when I got pregnant. So, yeah, they were off. And I kept telling them that, but they didn't want to listen. What was it, 38? Oh, at 37 weeks, they were already talking about doing a C-section. And no, not a C-section, sorry. Inducing him. And this is their 37 weeks, not mine. Inducing him. And I quote, the doctor literally looked at me and said, nothing's wrong. You and the baby are healthy. But it would just be easier on you because you wouldn't have to be pregnant as long. What? Okay, so flash forward my, 39 weeks checkup. I went in and I was due on a Sunday, July 31st. I went in on a Monday on week 39. And these people, keep in mind, I hadn't even dropped yet. He hadn't dropped. He'd considered it. He dropped a little bit and he'd go back up. So he wasn't ready to come out. These people looked at me and told me because my blood pressure was slightly elevated. Like, the only time my blood pressure had been elevated, and it was only slight, and I just drove across town, like 30-minute drive in rush hour traffic, stressed out the ass, everything else. So yeah, it was slightly elevated. Not even enough to be medically a concern. But the doctor looked at me and she goes, I know you're scheduled for an induction, but I suggest you go to the hospital now and get induced. First of all, what? When? Did y'all schedule me for an induction? I told him at 37 weeks, no, I was having this child naturally. And next thing I know, I'm scheduled for an induction that they didn't even tell me about. So that was amazing. And then they wouldn't let me cancel the appointment, so I just didn't show up. I called and I told them I was canceling the appointment, and they kind of ignored me, so I just didn't show up to the appointment because I told them I was not going to be there. They learned I wasn't going to be there. I kid you not, as soon as that happened, they're calling me, trying to get me to come in and do a checkup and yada yada, so on and so forth, and trying to get me to do an induction. So I kind of just started ghosting my freaking OB, GY, and my OB. I just got ghosting my OB because they were literally freaking calling me back to back to back to back to back to back to back, harassing me because I would not go get induced like they wanted me to. And they were trying to get me to induce before I was even due. So, yeah. I flash forward about 3 weeks. Apparently, I was in labor. I didn't even know it, but, when I started actually, like, even feeling it, you know how they tell you 5 minutes apart, get to the hospital. Yeah, I started feeling contractions about 3 to 4 minutes apart. Amazing. Ended up going to another hospital because it was closer. I didn't want to go to the one that my OB was with because they had ticked me off and I was ghosting them at this point. Sadly, they were still the better hospital for all of this, other than the COVID BS and their limits and the fact that you had to be tested for COVID and you were only allowed one person in the room, and if they left, they couldn't come back, and it was a mess. It's like, there's no way in hell my boyfriend is going to sit there for the entire period of my hospital stay and not leave. He smokes. He is not gonna sit there. Yeah, no. And if they go out of the hospital, they can't come back. So I was like, yeah, I ain't doing that. That's not amazing. If the OB had made it more obvious that they were going to try to force me into induction sooner, I would have actually had a different doctor already, but they waited until I could not get another OB, so that was awesome. So I ended up at a really, really crappy hospital that is really, really bad. It's a really bad hospital. It has very bad reviews on it, but it was the closest hospital, so that's the one I ended up at. These people admitted me, could not, the monitor, every time they come in and check, the monitor kept moving, so they kept losing his heartbeat and stuff, and instead of fixing their monitors, they came in and checked dilation. I forget how far along I was dilated, but like I made it to 6 centimeters before everything got really stupid, but was that like 4 centimeters or something like that? It either way, it was before they're actually technically allowed to induce you. But yeah, she came in and checked. She's like, check my dilation, and then she's like, I'm going to go ahead and pop your, well, did she say induce or pop water? I don't remember exactly which one she said. It was 7.5 months ago, but she came in, she's like, oh, you're this many centimeters. I think I was 4. You're 4 centimeters dilated. And then pop. Yeah, it was 4 centimeters. She's like, she just popped my water without it really even. So, yeah. And then they had to start flushing. Well, they were complaining because he had pooped in the water. I'm like, and his heart, after that, his heart rate was a little bit erratic. I'm like, you know, he was perfectly fine, moving around, everything great, until y'all went and popped the water, and honestly, y'all might have just scared the shit out of him, like, quite literally. Because that's when his heart rate started giving issues and everything like that. So, well, lo and behold, they leave. Keep in mind, they're not letting me move. They have me strapped to the bed with so many cords, I can't move on my own. Well, about 5 centimeters dilated, like 2 hours after they popped the water. They come in here, not telling me anything. They just grabbed me. And keep in mind, contractions, at least for me, weren't that painful. But when they would move me during one, it hurts like a son of a bitch. That was the only time the contractions were painful, was when they kept making me move during one. Without saying anything, a freaking horde of doctors and nurses freaking fled into the room, grabbed me, rolled me over, shoved my face into a freaking mattress, and were telling me that they were going to go and take me to an emergency C-section because the baby's heart rate was dropping. Nobody could go back with me because they were going to completely knock me out. And I would wake up whenever. Every time I tried to tell them this was not what I wanted to do, they shoved my face back into the mattress so they could not hear my answer. My boyfriend actually blocked the door and forced them to wait a minute and chill out. Keep in mind, my dilation in this 15 minutes that he had an argument with them, went from 5 centimeters to 6 centimeters in 15 minutes. It didn't go anywhere after that, but like I said, because I kept asking them if I moved, would it help? No, they would not let me move. Not move, roll, anything like that. Even though, from what I've heard, that's the best way to speed up dilation. But yeah. But they kept arguing and telling me my baby was going to die. All this stuff. All while his heart rate was going back to normal. Found out later that one of the possibilities was potentially he was laying on his umbilical cord, and that's what was causing the heart rate issue. Or because I had like 3 different freaking monitors on him and me for his heart rate, and each one of them would give issues every time I moved. It would lose his heart rate every time I moved just right. I honestly don't think he had an issue anyway. But after like 2 more hours, and I hadn't dilated anymore, mind you, I think I would have if they would have let me move. But they wouldn't. They finally ended up taking me to a normal C-section, because originally they told me they could not do a C-section where I would be awake and that the baby's father could be in the room with him because it was an emergency and they didn't have time to do it. Okay, well, they finally, like I said, 2 hours later, decided, okay, well, for the baby's sake and everything, we're going to do this C-section. We don't have to knock you out. It's okay. Y'all be fine. Drugged her feet. Like 30 minutes after they initiated this emergency C-section, they finally came to put the numbing agent in me and start the C-section. But, you know, they were in a all-fired hurry to do that before, because, you know, a life and death situation. So that was amazing. Not. Thank God for the anesthesiologist, because he was the friendliest one in the room. None of the doctors acknowledged me, said anything, explained anything. The anesthesiologist is literally sitting there step by step explaining exactly what they're doing and talking about the baby and everything. Lo and behold, they get the kid out. They have the NICU, basically the newborn ICU freaking people there, like a freaking pile of them waiting, because they're expecting this kid to be in bad shape because, you know, emergency C-section, yada yada, so on and so forth. They get him out. He's perfectly fine, perfectly healthy, happy. Everything's alright. To the fact that the actual NICU head came over there and said, I've never seen a more healthy baby. I'm surprised. I don't know why they called us in. I'll tell you why they called y'all in. They went and they popped my water too soon, and they were starting to panic because you can only have a child like that for so long before it starts causing issues. By the way, it was causing so many issues that they actually had a saline solution down there flushing for it. The one problem he did have was he was slightly cold for a few days because of everything. But the saline solution that they were flushing down there to keep him in liquid was not warm. It was cold. It did not help the contractions. It was a horrible experience. Yeah, and this is supposed to be like a Christian-y freaking hospital, by the way. But they were very rough with him. They not once, knowing that we were both new parents, never once, thank God, we both had younger siblings that we learned this from, especially me, because I learned how to take care of my younger brother. I was 9.5 when he was born, so, and I had my parents and everything to help me, but not once did they say support the baby's head. They didn't even support the baby's head. They would like literally pick him up, and thank God he had a decent whole control of his head, because he was picking his head up when he was born. Thank God for that, because they would have probably broke his neck with the way they were handling him. Due to the C-section, he had a lot of fluid intake, because the process of being born actually squeezes a lot of that out of the baby so that they don't have a bunch of issues. Yeah, he had a lot of choking issues for the first few days of his life, because he had a lot of stuff in his lungs and stomach that he shouldn't have. I still think he would have been perfectly fine if they just left me alone. There's a part of me that really can't forgive them for that, because that is not how I wanted to do that. But it's not much I can do about that now. Yeah, he had a lot of, he tried to choke quite a bit, and the nurses were like, oh, just leave him on his back when he's choking. That's the best position for him. Yeah, no. You pick him up, you put him on their stomach, and you pat them on the back. I am sorry. Let's put a drunk person who is throwing up in their sleep on their back, and you call that, and then we call that drowning, and death by intoxicated drowning on their own vomit. So yeah, no, I'm not doing that to my son. Well, the same chick that told us this right before we were fixing to leave the hospital, he started choking. Well, I guess he was starting to turn slightly blue, because he, I guess, scared her. But she literally reached over before I could get to him, snatched him up by his lower half so freaking fast, I'm not surprised he didn't get whiplash. Whew. If ever there was a time my boyfriend was about to kill somebody, that lady does not know how close she came to dying. And he was pretty, like, ticked off at the beginning when they were trying to do the emergency C-section against our will. But yeah, not an amazing experience there. Going back to my regular OB once the baby was born to have the C-section checked out as it was healing. They didn't do that great a job on that either. I literally had a doctor tell me it would not be a pretty scar because it was jagged and zigzagged, because they really didn't close it up correctly. So it's wavy. Yeah. And to anybody out there who's thinking a C-section is a great idea, the one little thing they do not tell you, I never wanted the C-section anyway. I hated that freaking whole concept and everything else. I'm glad we ended up doing the C-section as we did, because I have a feeling that if they had done the emergency one, they would have cut the line differently, and you can't really, it's a bad idea to have kids after that, because emergency C-sections where it's cut this way instead of this way, it messes up the womb, and there's a good chance that you can't actually carry another baby without it ripping. So I'm glad that we didn't do that, because I have a really nagging suspicion that was what they were planning on doing when they did that. But that was a side note. But yeah, in case people have not told y'all, and I highly doubt they have, because they are trying so freaking desperately to promote C-sections. It's not even funny, because it's more convenient to the doctor. It's unhealthy for the child. Nothing about that's healthy. They're probably gonna have some type of lung issues, or just they're gonna be choking for a little while. It's not good for the baby. Please research that before y'all decide to do it. Also, for anybody that finds that area sexually stimulating, and even if y'all don't, y'all be slightly surprised at how stimulating that is, even if y'all don't notice it. That area, the likelihood that you ever be able to have feeling in that entire area again is very slim, and they don't like telling you that. So I do suggest y'all think about that, because I haven't met a single chick yet that had a C-section, even ones where their kids are 18 and older, where they have ever gained feeling in that back. The doctors will tell you there is, forget if they tell you there's a 50-50 chance or whatever, but they tell you there's a chance that you will gain feeling back there. But I haven't met anybody yet that has feeling in this entire freaking area. So, for those of you doing this outside of necessity, I would suggest y'all rethink y'all's decisions on that. But that's my thoughts on it. My next kid, I'm hopefully going to have a VBAC, so that's my impressions on it. I was really wanting a midwife. The VBAC is going to throw it like a little bit of a wrench in that, but hopefully we'll make that work. So I wanted to have a freaking midwife with him. I just could not find one that was not shady or a house call, and I really didn't want to have a house call. And by the time, like I said, by the time the OB decided to tell me that they were going to try to screw me, no OB would touch it. Not only that, but when he was considered 3 weeks past due on their charts, which I think he was only maybe 1 week past due, which the longer they're in, the more spiritually inclined I heard they were, but that's not the point. But anyway, he was only maybe 1 week past due, if that. I lost my train of thought. Yeah, regardless, because he was considered 3 weeks past due to all these doctors, he would have been, the midwife would not have delivered him at that point anyway, which is amazing. But yeah, and for those of you that might be doctors out there that are sitting there going, oh, this is how we do it, and that's an accurate time limit, maybe if I hadn't got pregnant, let me put it this way, they were expecting me to have gotten pregnant on October 24th. I know for a fact I was not pregnant until at least November 16th. So there was like no possibility I was pregnant with him before that. So take that into consideration, because I know somebody out there is going to want to argue with that fact. So yeah, there's your 3 weeks right there. Take it or leave it. But yeah. Anyway, I think I'm done ranting about quality hospital staff and things and C-sections and peachiness and all that. So I'm gonna end that now. Later.